Oh. Bhagavad Gita's chapter 6, verses 24 and 25 are like an executive summary on dhyana yoga. Try to memorize these verses. If you remember, you will practice. Sankalpa prabhavan kaman. By imagining, one can create joy. This gives birth or solidifies into a desire. I'm going to read to you a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam. This is in the 11th section, the 2nd chapter, the 37th verse, where Sri Vasudeva, that is Sri Krishna's father, is being taught about contemplation. I'll read it in English. For one whose mind is turned away from the Lord, there will be no awareness of his own true self. As a consequence, he will feel identified with the body. From such identification will rise hankering and attachments for bodily objects, and from it, fear of their loss and of death. All this arises from the functioning of his Maya, which none can overcome except by his grace. So let a wise man serve the Lord through wholehearted devotion, recognizing his presence in the Guru, in the deities, and in all beings. Shared simply, that if one is not contemplating on joy, they're going to keep feeling they can create joy, and one gets lost. Tyaktva sarvana sheshataha. These imaginations have to be checked constantly. We can practice this by praying. The highest expression of prayer is not to be purposeful, where I'm praying for ... It is to be grateful. I'm grateful for what I have, who I am, what my nature is. If one is practicing gratitude, they don't have to imagine that they can create joy. They are feeling this in themselves as themselves. Manasevendriya gramam. The senses are directed by the mind. Try to visualize that you're at an airport about to board a plane. When you're at that airport, what do you have to do? Check your bags. That relates to our space to our seat. Everything is checked, so I don't have to think about it. And then the senses, that would be like our possessions. You go through a metal detector, correct? Or now those body scans. So that's our senses. Those are checked now too. They're disengaged. When my external world is checked, then viniyamya samantataha, my mind is directed. It can't go to the outer world, so now it's going to the inner world. And I want you to visualize the room that was described earlier. Directing the mind is entering this room. For this room to be windless, for this room to have a lamp. This is the first part of contemplation. Now the second part, verse 25. Shanai shanai uparamed buddhya driti grihitaya atma samstammana kritva na kinchid api chintayet shanaihi. And then this is repeated, shanaihi. This means slowly. This is not a crash course on contemplation. If you feel this, now I'll play with the word, you will crash. Perhaps a better word than slowly is steadily. Be steady in your practice. Same space, same time, same intention. This will evolve to sincerity. The more steady you are with whatever, you become sincere with that. Just think of driving. Most of us are steady with driving, which is why driving becomes natural then. And sincerity evolves to being strong. The strength to not create joy. Can you visualize how strong you have to be? That joy cannot be created. That's a game changer in our lives, lifetimes. As you're being steady, evolving to sincerity, evolving to strength, this will require you to forgive yourself. There are days where you're going to sleep in. There are days where you're not going to be contemplating on the infinite, you'll be contemplating on an argument. If you don't forgive yourself, slowly, you will not be steady, slowly you will be unsteady. And that's why the word uparamet is used. Uparama means to understand. When one understands what this journey, what contemplation entails, they know they have to be steady. They know they have to be forgiving, that one is in this for the long term. Just think of a personal relationship. Isn't forgiveness required? Isn't understanding required? And that's just for a relationship. Now, to rediscover infinity, that would have to be more acute. Buddhya driti grihitaya, the senses are checked by the mind. How is the mind being checked? Dhriti grihitaya, it is being held, buddhya, by the intellect. This is what we're doing in contemplation. By identifying with the intellect, I disidentify from the mind. The intellect is that which is idealistic. To contemplate is an ideal, that I'm not going to create joy, I'm going to rediscover it. Shared in a more light way, it is purpose. Purpose pulls performance. When your intellect has a purpose, the mind will follow. When the mind has a purpose, the senses will follow. Generally, we should have the ideal, the purpose to serve, to smile. When my day is like this, I become physically and mentally healthier so that when I practice contemplation, which is specific, it is like I have this general health, but there's this disease. So contemplation is the surgery to tend to this disease. The ideal, the purpose, is for me to change my identity to infinity. If we don't have a general purpose, we will not be able to tune into a specific purpose that is needed for contemplation. Those who are practicing this specific purpose will then help you with your general purpose. As an example, those who are strong contemplators, they are also strong sleepers. They're able to rapidly quieten their mind. They're able to rapidly wake up and integrate into the world. Have you seen that change in yourself? But please do not spin it the other way. I'm a strong sleeper, so that must mean I'm a strong contemplator. It doesn't flow that way, okay? This is a vein, one way. Or shared differently, for all of you who are practicing contemplation, doesn't your day become more cheerful? Once you've oriented yourself in the morning, the rest of the day is more fun. The importance of the buddhi. It is our most powerful equipment. Third quarter. Atma samstam mana kritva. The intellect, which has checked the mind, is directing the mind now. Mana kritva. To what? Atma samstam. It is directing the memory, the mind itself, the ego, to the Atma. In verse 14, which was the final verse on how to contemplate, this is a re-summary. The word matparaha is used. When one is contemplating, they have to have this ideal that Sri Krishna, the creator, is the highest, is the final. The next verse, verse 15, that changes to mat sanstam. One who's practicing this, they are established in mat, Sri Krishna, the creator. Now in verse 25, what word is used? Not mat, but atma. Atma here means consciousness. First, contemplate on God. When you become strong with this, naturally, you will contemplate, you will identify with infinity. Earlier this week, I'd shared a quote from Sri Ramana. This is on social media. The quote is, "It is by God's grace that you think of God." It is by God's grace that you think of God. What's amazing for us is we've been thinking of God for almost 700 days. That is intense grace that is flowing through us to the world around us. When you're practicing, what shouldn't you do? Last quarter, na kinchit, do not at all, api chintayet, think of any other subject. Body, breath, mind, intellect, ego are all to be directed towards the Atma and nowhere else. Being more specific, when you are practicing contemplation and you are tasting the Atma, which is joy, do not describe it. Like food, this broccoli is so good, cooked at the perfect temperature. Do not do that in contemplation. Just be joyous. Don't describe it. And that's why I've shared, this is not a technique. For those who are learning techniques on contemplation, they describe it. This is transcendental. This is kriya, and so on. See how that catalyzes you shifting from Atma to these descriptions. When you're practicing contemplation, initially, you will be joyous for a short period. But through your shanaihi, that period will keep on growing. For anyone who's had a serious injury, let's say you have torn a muscle in your arm, when you lift a weight, you can only hold it for a few seconds. But if you do this every day, seconds turns into minutes, correct? Into hours. You keep on increasing your capacity to be joyous until finally, full capacity is, I am not joyous, I am joy. Joyous is still conditional. Joy is natural. My final thought, when you are practicing contemplation, this should be natural. There should be no force. Let any sense of force go. Simply let it be. You tasting this joy, be there. Let it be. It is grace that is going to propel you to the goal. It will not come from your force. It will not come from your effort. It is His will. It is His work. Just be joyous until you are just being joy. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Oh. appreciate. Relax. Enjoy. Chant. Having disidentified from the pure lifestyle, calm body, natural breath, quiet mind, grihitaya, hold, dhriti, hold in a steady, sincere, strong. Hold all of these experiences and equipment, buddhya, with the intellect. The intellect is most powerful. In the symbolism of Gita, the intellect is Sri Krishna. All else is Prince Arjuna. The intellect is an equipment, though, and cannot be non-functional the intellect has to do. Atma, sanstam, direct the experiences, the equipments, including the intellect, to the Atma. In a simplistic sense, inquire. Acknowledging that the intellect is an equipment, there has to be a user of this equipment who is the user of this equipment. Who are you? You cannot be the intellect. It is an equipment that has a function. Rationally, you must be the user. Who is this user? The equipment and the employer of that equipment rationally have to be different. Inquire into the employer. Disidentify from the equipment. Identify with the employer. Practice. Shanti. Shanti. Shanti.